Before we get started, I have one small confession to make, which is that I am not completely and totally organized today. I've been doing really well the last couple times. I thought I was going to have plenty of time this morning and today to get this all done. And wouldn't you know it, right? I had a client emergency and took up most of the day, and then I was rushing to get this done. I also knew that I had totally messed up my sequences when I changed the time a couple of sessions ago, and that people weren't getting the right emails and stuff. So I was rushing to get that done. And so those of you who got a couple of emails, some blank ones about the extending Infusionsoft, and sorry about that. That's what you get for trying to do all this when you're like in a real hurry. Anyway, that's like the cardinal. My cardinal rule of code too is test it, test it, test it, test it. Because the moment you don't, it's gonna, something bad is gonna happen. Anyway, so with that in mind, there is no handout today. Yeah, I will put a handout together eventually, but right this moment, nope, Ramona, you are not late. We're just starting. Uh, um, right this moment, there is no handout. What there is, however, what I did, just so that you know, is I basically put all the notes in the code, and we'll just work off the code, and then later I will transfer those to the Google Doc. So I am going to give you a URL to the code so that if you want it, you can have it. It is this. I'm going to put it in chat right here so that you can get to it. So anyway, and everything's commented out right now for the moment, because this is what we're going to be doing. So these are all the examples and stuff. But anyway, at least it will give you something to follow along with. Well, now that's interesting. This does not appear to be my latest version of the code. Told you I was not completely organized. I apologize for that. Okay, well, we're all right. Actually, it's just the comments that are not as pretty as they are on but that's okay. All right, so here's the code if you'd like to follow along. Standard. Well, let me just start. So today's topic is loops, and loops we go hand in hand with arrays, which we did on Saturday. Very useful in order really to work with an array, which in order to use the API, you pretty much have to do, then you've got to really know how to do loops. So we're going to do loops today, and our standard disclaimers do apply. Those are that this is 80/20 programming. None of us intend, I don't think, to become professional programmers for a living. We're just trying to, as I like to say, get shit done quickly and economically. And this is what I would like to call class code. It is not 100% finished code because it makes it easier to read this way. There is specifically the most important thing to know if you haven't been here previously is that there is no error handling in this code. We will, on the last day, the 21st, add the error handling to this code. That's going to be the last thing that we do. But until then, it kind of goobers it up and makes it harder to read. It just gives you one extra thing to think about when you're just trying to get logic and syntax. So we're going to do that last. Okay, so please be aware that if you take any code from this class as is and put it on your server or on client server, what have you, and something is not correct, it is not going to die gracefully. Okay. All right, so with that, the other thing is I will, as always, we'll take questions, and if anyone feels that it would be easier to ask their question by just saying it out loud, let me know by raising your hand and I will unmute you and you can do it that way. So far, we haven't had anyone take me up on that. It seems like the just putting your questions in the question box has been sufficient for now. But anyway, that's there if you want it. All right, so loops. Let's get started with loops. Does everyone have this URL before I put this away? This is day 5. Yes, this is day 5, I think. Okay, good. All right. Oh, that's okay, Gary. So, glad that you're here. Thrilled that you're here. And so all of the, just so you know, so Gary's new. That's what he's saying. So all of you, just so you know, Gary, the you can get to everything that we've done previously is on the Train and Simple website. So if you just go here to Train and Simple under free resources, you will see the archives for days 1 through 4 right here on the first page. And I would encourage you to go back through those. They do go in, kind of a logical progression, but depending on how much or how little um, you may still get something out of this class anyway, just because you haven't uh, been here for the first 4. If you're a total, complete, and total newbie, then it may be a little bit of a challenge for you. Okay. Well, you might want to start at the beginning. I'd love to have you here, and you're welcome to just hang out and see what you think. But my suggestion would definitely be to kind of start at day 1. Okay. You bet. My pleasure. All right. So let's roll on with loops. Okay. So what we've got here is a starter document like we did the other day. Little bit bigger. Okay. So there are 4 1 2 3 4 yep, 4 different kinds of loops, and each one they do the same thing really, which is just what it sounds like, a loop. A loop iterates through a group of statements over and over and over again until something happens to cause it to stop. So they essentially, they're also known as control structures. They essentially do the same thing, but they do them just a tiny little bit different than one another, and that makes it so that very often one is more appropriate than another. So we're going to go through all 4. I'm going to show you some simple little examples, and then I'm going to show you in the API world, the Infusionsoft API world, the ones that you use the most and how you use it. And that's going to be the last one, the for each loop. Okay. It's not the only one, but it's the one that you use by far and away the most. So let's start with the for loop, FOR, for. So the for loop, as you can see, is used when you know how many times you want to execute a statement or a block of statements. Okay, so here's your syntax right here. Well, let's do this. Let's type out our example. That will be easier for you to see. So here's our example. So we're going to say, this is our for loop. Okay, we're going to say A equals 0, and we're going to say that B equals 0. And then here's our for loop. So you have the word for, and then you have open parentheses. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to have a what is called an initialization. Okay, it's a counter starting at something. Okay, so in this case, people generally use either I, for some reason, integer, I think, or count very often. Those are the 2 kind of counters that you see. That's just kind of, I don't know, conventional how people use it. So each of these 3 things, the initialization, the condition, and the increment, have well, the first, sorry, oops, that's wrong. The first two anyway, have a semicolon between them. So I equals 0, I is less than 5, and then increment I. So let me tell you, and then we have this open bracket, and so whatever comes in between here is what we're going to do during the loop. Okay, so what this is going to do, I can show this to you and it might make a little bit more sense, but what it's saying is, okay, we're going to start with I equals to 0, and we know how many times we want to loop through this loop. It's 5. So this is basically the equivalent of while. So it's saying start with I equals 0, and as long as I is less than 5, every time you get to the end of the loop, increment I by 1. That's what these two little plus signs mean. This means increment by 1. You'll see in another example, if it looks like that, it's going to decrement it. But anyway, I equals, and then increment it by 1, and just keep looping until this is no longer true, and then stop, break out of the loop. So so it would look like this. Here's some more of these little increment things. This is a way, this is a shorthand way of saying take the value of A and add 10 to it. So if A is 10, add 10 more. Every time you go through, take whatever's in A, add 10 to it. We're going to do the same thing here with B, plus equals 5. Okay, so that says every time through, except that I'm having a hard time today. Why can't I get my hand on the deal there? Plus equals 5. Okay, every time through, add 5 to it. And then we're going to say echo A equals. Then you'll start concatenate from, we did this before multiple times. By the time we get to strings, you guys are going to be pretty darn good at strings. Okay, and we're going to concatenate with that. And B equals B, and then we'll put a break in there like that. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So, well, and let's just put another echo down here. So down here so this is the loop right here. Okay. Everything in here happens over and over and over till it breaks out of the loop. So down here at the bottom, what we want to do is we want to say at the end of the loop, A equals, put a space in there, A equals A, and concatenate with that, and B equals B, 2 breaks. Whoops. There we go. All right. So let's see what happens when we run this. I believe I have everything in this whole thing commented out, so it should, yep, it should run okay. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to run it. Okay, did something wrong. Line 31. What did I do wrong? I should have read it. What did it say? Oh, okay. I'm missing something here. Echo. Oh, missed a concatenate right there. Okay, good. Now it should work. Save and preview. Perfect. Okay, let's make this bigger. Okay, so be nice if I could have these side by side, but you can see what come on, Kim, what's happening here, right? Here's the loop. So I is going to start with 0. As long as I is less than 5, do these things, then add 1 to I, do them again, and keep going until I is no longer less than 5. Break out of that, and then echo at the end of the loop, A equals and B equals. So when you look at it, right, Remember, I started out as 0, and on the first pass, we added 10 and we added 5. Okay, we incremented it by 1, so now I is equal to 1, so it's going to keep going. So now we add 10, we add 5, now I is equal to 2. We keep going. I is equal to 3, I is equal to 4, I is equal to 5. So at this last pass, when it comes back through, it's going to say, oh, I is no longer less than 5, so I stop, I break out of the loop, and I print at the end of the loop, A equals 50 and B equals 25. So the reason I put those echoes there was just so that you could actually see it working its way through the loop, and then stopping when this condition in the middle is no longer true. So that is an example of a for loop. For I equals 0, while I is less than 5, do this. Okay, that's for. Now, again, the time that you would use this is when you know how many times you want to loop. And I will give you an example from my own um, one. I always talk about my script that clones opportunities that I did. And the client wanted to be able to clone opportunities a specific number of times. Sometimes it was 2, sometimes it was 10, sometimes it was 50. So they actually entered the number of times they wanted to clone the opportunity in a form, and then we did that. So in that case, I was how many times they wanted to clone the opportunity. We knew what that was, 5. Okay. So we would loop through there and clone it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stop. The number of times that we wanted to loop was known, okay, because it was put in the form. So that's an example. It's not all that common, but that is an example where in Infusionsoft you might use a for loop. Okay. Questions on loops and or for loops at this point? Anyone? Good. Okay. All right. So I'm going to comment that out so it does not get in our way. All right, let's talk about the next one. So the next one is the while loop. Okay. It's pretty darn similar, actually. The while loop is going to also execute a block of code if and as long as the test expression is true. So if it's true, it's going to execute this code block. After it's executed it comes up here to the top. It's going to check it again. If it's found to be false, then it just drops out of the loop. Okay. So let's do an example of a while loop, which is going to be, all of these are going to look kind of similar. So let's see, a while loop. A while loop is going to look something like this. Wait, let me just do this over here. Okay. So a while loop is going to be, so we're going to say, okay, so we're going to initialize the while loop here. Okay. I equals 0. And then we're going to say num equals 50. So we have an I and we have a num. Okay. So what we're going to do with a while loop is we're going to say while, again, open parentheses, while I is less than 10, do this. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take num, which is initially set to 50, and we're going to decrement it. Okay. Remember before up here we had I and we were incrementing. Now here this is num and we are decrementing. So every time it goes through, it's going to subtract 1 from num. By the way, these are all, if you go look for logical or logical operators, no, arithmetic operators in PHP manual, all these are in there. So we're gonna take 1 off of num and we're gonna add 1 to I, and then we're gonna echo. echo I equals I and num equals num and a break and a semicolon. All right, and then let's do this. Okay, echo loop stopped at I equals, put I, the variable I in there, and then we're going to say and num equals. See, I'm typing these things because you guys, at least one of you, told me that this gives you a chance to kind of absorb what we're doing. So I hope you don't get frustrated with my typing because I have a really hard time typing and talking at the same time. But anyway, all right. Oh, our lop stopped. Here we go. Our loop. Okay, let's try this. Let's see what happens. All right, go. Well, so before I do this, so what do you think this is going to look like? Right, as it's echoed just in your brain. You don't have to say out loud, or you don't have to type it in, but just think this through for a second and just think there's going to be this list of numbers every time, right? It's going to say I equals something, num equals something, and how many times are you going to see that before the loop stops? Okay, that's the question. So let's run it and let's just see. Right, it's running. Hang on there. Okay, so it ran 10 times because we said I is less than 10. Run while I is less than 10. And so you can see it added 1 each time to I, because remember, let's just look at this code again, because this is kind of important. And you can make these be however you want or however you need them to be. And I always thought, well, why are they doing all these stupid counters and things? Actually, believe it or not, these counters and things come in kind of handy. Like when you're looping through an array, these end up being like the indexes of your array, or there's all kinds of things where you do actually use a counter, and that value is not just to say loop through this a certain number of times, but to also point to the value that it is while you're looping. So that's why we kind of, these are like sort of C, Dick and Jane, C spot run to begin with, but they actually are more useful than you might think. Okay, so let's look at it again. So we initialized I as 0, and we initialized num as 50. And we said, well, is I less than 10? Yeah, of course it is, right? Well, the very first thing that we did before we printed it was we took 1 away from num, so we made it 49, and we added 1 to I, so we made it 1. Okay, so so even though we started at 0 and 50, the first things to print were 49 and 1. And then it kept going through, right, like that till it got to 10 and 40. Loop stopped at I equals 10, num equals 40. Okay, so that is an example of a while loop. While this is true, do this. Okay, now the next one, very, very similar. It's a do while. Now the difference between this one and this one is that on the do while, the condition's at the bottom instead of the top. So back to here. So you'll see up here, the while loop, it says, the first thing it says is, oh, is I less than 10? Well, guess what would have happened? Let's just redo this. What if we had started out with I equal to 12? Okay. What would happen on our while loop if we started out that way? Loop stopped at 12 and 50. It never looped, because right away the first thing it hit was this condition. That condition is false, therefore it went to the end of the loop and executed the very next statement. Okay, but what you're going to see about the do while is it does the opposite of that. It's always going to execute at least once, because the while condition is at the bottom. And so it's going to execute once, then it's going to check the condition, and if it's true, it's going to loop again, right? So the order on the do while is reversed. So the do while is going to look like this. We're going to say I equals 0, I equals 0, and then we're going to say do. Oops, do. All right, so here's what we are going to do. We are going to increment I. Oops, plus plus. Okay. Then we're going to echo. I is equal to I, and then put a break so that we get a nice clean semicolon. All right. So echo I equals I, and then, oops, that's it. Okay. So just we're going to increment it by 1. We're just going to echo what it is, but here we have to have our while condition. So our while condition is while I is less than 10. So that's in there, and then we got to put a semicolon to close that. Okay. So what this is saying is we're going to start with I equals to 0, and we're going to increment by 1. So now, right out of the gate, before we've ever checked a condition, I is equal to 1. Echo I equals 1. Break. Is I less than 10? Yes. Do it again. Okay. So now increment I is equal to 2, right? I equals to 2. Well, is it less than 10? Yes. So it's going to check at the bottom. So let's put another real quick. Let's just put, it's be easier actually if I just copied this one. So on this one, we're going to say just loop stopped at I. Okay, like that, and then we're going to say save. Preview. There we go. I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Loop stopped at I10. Okay. But it's always now. So let me show you. Let me show you that it is always. Let's make this is I is less than 10. But here, let's make I equals to 12. Okay. I equals 12. We're going to hit save. We're going to hit preview. Give it a second. Come on, run. There. I equals 13. It started at 12. It incremented it by 1. It checked the while and went, oh, yep, this is definitely greater than 10, so just stop. Okay, so that's the difference between while and do while. Okay, let's see here what question. Yes, so Peter's question, exactly. So Peter's question is, he says, so if we wanted to find 2 or 3 specific tags in a contact record, we would return all tags in an array and then loop through them until they are found. Right. Yes, right. That's exactly right. So the thing that we initially had on the calendar for the other day, but I postponed until to Thursday, I think, when we do strings, is called the explode function. And so when you look at a contact record in Infusionsoft, there's actually, it stores tags in multiple places. One is it's in the group assign table. And in that table, for every tag you have, there will be one row. But they also put it, there is a groups, or I'm not calling it the exact right name. I forget the field name, but it's basically a tags field in the contact record as well. And that's just a list of tags that looks like this. You know, if these were tag IDs, oops, and you had, oh, well, you know what I'm saying, and you had hundreds of them, all your tag IDs would be in a row like this in that field. And so one of the fastest and easiest ways to get to these tags is to pull that field using contact load. And then what we're going to do on Thursday is the explode function. It explodes these into an array so that each one of these is, this is at position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right now it's just a string, but it turns that into an array. And then exactly what you said, Peter. You loop through that array that you created with explode, loop, because let's say you're looking through 158. You're going to say, you're actually going to use for each for this, but anyway, you're going to loop, loop, loop. Oh, found it, 158. You can stop now. That was the one I was looking for. Okay, so that is exactly right. Loops are really, really handy anytime you have lists. Anytime you're trying to do something with a list or an array, then you're pretty much gonna have to use a loop to find or do what you want to each value in that array. Okay, so great question, great pickup. All right, so that is our do while. Okay, now so let's do a for each. Okay, this is the loop that I use the most. I think anybody who does pretty, fairly basic scripting with the Infusionsoft API, chances are they're going to tell you the same thing. And that's because this one is its real purpose is for looping through arrays. And that's what we work with a lot in Infusionsoft. Okay. So what happens is, each pass, right, the value of the current array element gets assigned to this value here. And then each time the pointer gets moved by one, it goes through again and again and again. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like here. Okay, so we're going to do a for each. And then one of the things we're going to do is we are going to apply that to the code that we wrote on Saturday when we were doing arrays. So let's just do this. So we're going to say array equals an array. Remember this from Saturday, that the way we designate an array is we assign it to a variable, but then we just tell it, hey, this is an array. Okay, so, and that's how we do that. And so we're going to say 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 places in our array. And then we're going to say for each, and we'll say array as value. Now, I'll come back to this. This as value thing is something that, this is, again, it's kind of like using I or num or count for your counters. It's sort of a standard practice, I guess. It doesn't have to be that, and it can be whatever makes sense to you. It's just like naming it is a variable. So just like naming variables, if it makes sense to you to call it something else, you can, and I will show you that. But so we have this for each loop, and then so what we're going to do is we're going to say, for now, we're just going to do something very simple. We're going to say value is, concatenate that with value. And then we'll do breaks. Oops. Okay. That's it. Okay, because I want to show you this. So let's do this. Am I missing anything? No. Save that. Okay, and preview. Let that run. Boom. Okay. Value. So notice here. Now here's so notice what happened here. Values 1, values 2, values 3, values 4, 5. Okay. But notice there is no condition in this one. Every other one that we did evaluates against some sort of condition. Okay. Here, in the do while, it's got a condition here. Here in the while loop, it's got a condition up here. In the for loop, it's got its condition set here in the middle, actually right here. Okay, every one of the other ones of these is evaluating against a condition which either you know in advance or you kind of figure out programmatically as you go. This is the only one where there is no condition. What it basically does is it just says, I'm going to just keep going till I get to the end of the list. unless you tell me otherwise, which we're going to do down here with the break statement. Unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to loop till I get to the end, whether that's 1 or 5 or 5,000 records. I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, so that's how we get this loop. Now, so let's see. Do I want to? I think I'm going to wait and get any trickier. Well, no. Let me just show you. Let me just show you one other thing. So I'm calling this array in value because that's what people typically do. But I don't have to. I could, for example, let's just say these are. I'm calling this array my nums. Okay. So in which case, what we would do is we would say my nums as numbers. I mean, we could leave it as value. We could also say my nums as dogs. I mean, again, really doesn't matter so long as you know what you've called it and you keep it consistent. Okay, so what you're saying is, oops, actually, that's not right. That should be dogs. Okay, so if I do it this way and I print with dogs there, run, it's the same. Okay, make sure I did that. Yep, refresh. It's exactly the same. Values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whether I called it dogs or value or anything else. Okay, this is the array that goes in here. The name of the array. I don't even really know what this means exactly as something. I don't know why we do that. It's just how it works. Someone could probably explain it to you. I can't. But we just say this as this, whatever that is, this is what we're going to call here. And you're going to see like a more complex example with the API here in just a second. Okay, but this is our for each loop. Okay. And then I'm going to leave the rest for when we get to further down. Okay. Okay. So let's see here. So Ashley has a question. Could we parse all contacts and display the date a particular tag was applied on each record so that you could then see the last 5 people who had a particular tag applied in the last day in order? You could do that. Is that is that is a challenge. That is like not a beginner exercise because you're going to have to basically store all of those to get them in order. So it's I mean, definitely doable. And by the way, for those of you who want a challenge, that would be an awesome thing to sit down on a weekend and see if you can figure out how to do. Because what it's going to be is it's going to be loops inside of loops in order for you to be able to do that. And you'd have to pick which are the right loops and how to update the values that you're storing with the ones that the newer ones. So absolutely you could do it. And it's not C spot run. Let me put it that way. But yep, you could do that. Any other questions? By the way, Ashley, that would come out of a different table. That would come out of your tags table where it has one row for each tag assigned, and in that is the date that it's assigned. That would not be in those tags would not be in the contact table. All that is the tag ID. Okay. Any other questions on loops thus far? Okay. All right. Let's talk about break. So break is, I think you guys have seen break before actually. Maybe not in the PHP class, maybe in the extending Infusionsoft class. But anyway, so break is just what it sounds like. It's used to terminate the execution of a loop. As soon as it hits break, it says, okay, done. This loop, we're out of here. You put it inside the statement block, right? And at that moment, it stops running, moves to the next statement after the loop. So this is going to look like this. We're going to initiate this as I equals 0. We're going to have a while loop, and in that while loop, we're going to say while I is less than 10, and we're going to do something. And here's the something. We're going to increment I. We're going to echo I equals something. I. Just a break's probably good here. Okay. And oh, then now watch this. So now we're going to say if. So here's an if statement. Okay, we did this a while back, a couple classes ago, right? So if I is equal to 3, remember that equal because we assign things, we assign to variables using 1 equal. 2 equals is like what we actually think of as being an equals. So if I equals 3, break. And then we'll put an echo down here that says echo. Oh, just going to copy and paste. Easier. I stopped at I. Loop stopped at I equals. Perfect. Okay, so let's run this. So we have, so what we're saying here is, we're starting with I equals 0. We're saying while I is less than 10. Okay, so let's do this. Let's comment that line out first. Okay, so without that, it's just going to run 10 times. Any minute now. Boom. Okay. Runs 10 times, loop stopped at 10. But if we take that out and we leave this if I equals 3 break in here, now what's going to happen? Okay. How many times is it going to run? Well, it's going to run 3. Because even though we said while I is less than 10, it's going to it hits that I equals 3 and it breaks. Now let's compare this with continue. So this is break. Do I want to? Yeah, let's. All right, I'm going to comment this out for a second. We may come back to this though. Okay, so let's look at break. Break is. I think I can just do. I think this is going to be. I mean, not break. This is continue. Okay, so with continue, what we're going to do is we're going to say array equals. Actually, I think I did this. Okay, just copy. Oops, copy and paste. Okay, let's just change this to array. Change these back to what I had. This was array, so it matches your handout as value. And then this was value. Okay, so we have for each array is value. Okay, echo value is something. But now what we're going to do, this is what we had before. But now what we're going to do is we're going to, well, let's just run this first. Okay, run. Boom. Value goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what we thought. Okay. Now let's add something. We're going to put an if in, just like we had before. If value equals 3, then instead of break, we're going to say continue. Okay. Now, what continue does is continue stops the current iteration of the loop, but it doesn't terminate the loop itself. Okay, so it does not break out of the loop, it just stops the current iteration. So if value is 3, continue. What do you think is going to happen here? So think to yourself, when I run this, what are you going to see? What's going to happen on the third time through here? And is there going to be anything after that? Okay. Absolutely, Ramona. Well done. That's exactly right. Okay. Yep, exactly. We'll let it run. Whoops. I got to save it. Sorry about that. Save. Run. It skips 3, but it continues on. That's right. Because if you look at it, right, it doesn't break out of the loop. It just says, oh, go to the end of this and start looping again. Okay. As opposed to break, which says we're done. We're never coming back to this loop. Okay. Stops the current iteration of the loop, but continues on. Okay. So questions, let's see, questions about that. Let's see, or anything. Let's see. Yes, that's people answering. Ah, good. Okay. Ramona said that was going to be her question about when we did break, how to get back in the loop. No, that was it. So you never have to use break and continue together. No. Uh, not in the same statement block. It wouldn't really make any sense. Okay. Okay, let's see. Can I explain equals and equals again? Yes. Okay. So, oh, good point, Ashley. I knew that, but I just wasn't thinking about it. Thank you for that. Ashley reminded me that I can actually break this into code and preview side by side, and I totally had forgotten that. So equal and plus, yeah. So in PHP, Simon, when we do, well, this is not really a good place for it, but here, when we say, a equals 1, we're not really saying equals. We're saying this value is assigned to this variable, this piece of Tupperware, the storage that we're going to take the value 1 and we're going to put it in it. Okay, so this is actually not equals, it's assigned. It's an assignment variable. It assigns a value to a variable. If we want to say as a test for a condition, is a equal to 1, it looks like this. This means, and this means loosely equal. And so what this means is it's pretty flexible in terms of typing. If this was lowercase and uppercase, or a string, or versus an integer versus a float, for example, it'll treat 1 and 1.0 basically as the same, as opposed to then the third one, which is exactly equal. Oops, will not. This is exactly equals. And so in that case, everything has to be exact, the type, the everything. Okay, so this is assigned, this is loosely equal, and this is exactly identical to in PHP. That's how those 3 work. Okay. You bet. Let's see what else. All right, I do. So still, oh, Ramona, you still don't get the difference between equal and 3. Let me just do this. Sometimes the best way to do that is actually to just go pull up the manual. So, or Stack Exchange, which sometimes Exchange explains things better than the manual does. Difference between Stack Overflow. I said Stack Exchange. Except I didn't spell it right. Difference between program interview, here's Stack Overflow. So, simple question, what's the difference between, oh, that's about single and double quotes. I'm not quite sure how I got that. But over here, let's see, over here in, why did I get that? All right, oh, here's one. Here it is. Is there any difference between 2 and 3 equal signs in PHP? Both seem to work fine for me when I use them in a conditional statement. Very new to programming PHP, please consider this and answer in simple words. So here's their answer. So here's the answer. A equals B is true if A is equal to B after type juggling, right? A identical true if A is equal to B and they are of the same type. Okay, so that, I mean, that is actually kind of basically what I said. So by type, when we say type, we're talking about data types. Okay, so the data types in PHP are string, date time, integer, float. Here we go, booleans, arrays, objects, null, etc. Okay, so the thing about, because PHP is very flexible about types, it's loosely cast. It doesn't really care whether something's an integer or a float. It actually kind of converts things from one to another on the fly. It'll say, yeah, this was a string, but the way that you're using it now, you kind of really want that to be a date, not a string. Or, yeah, like a float has a decimal and an integer doesn't. Well, I don't care if I'm PHP. Generally, whether you use 1.0 or 1 and you try to make these, if you try to make these equal like this, it's going to say that that is true. But if you make these equal like this, because these are technically two different data types, this is a float and this is an integer, this is not going to be true. So it's really saying that like I said, it has to be identical, including and down to type. Good. All right. All right. Great. All right. Get through that one. Okay, good. Okay, good. Can I demo that with an if statement? I think I can. So let me just see if I can do Ashley's deal here. Okay. Actually, what I want is not that. You go away. I wanted this to be a. How do I get rid of you? I forget. Nope. How do I get rid of this? Oh, yeah, here. There. Hang on. On a preview window. There. Okay. So let's do it this way. Where did I have? Lost my place. Here. Okay. So your if Simon would look like this. So we would say we're going to assign I equal to 1. And let's see. How could I do this? Let's say I int 1. Let's try that. See what happens. So let's say if I equals 1 echo true. Okay, let's try that. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so let's save this. Oh, except that I got rid of my I. That wasn't very smart. Okay, try that. Okay, No, didn't like that int. Okay, let's do this. Let's do it like this. Let's say int equals 1, and let's say float equals 1.0. Let's try that. So we're going to say if I equals f, echo true. Let's try that, see what it does. True. Okay. So you guys see this over here? Not sure I can make it bigger over here. I should be able to. Yep. Oops. Okay. So now let's do this. Save. Nothing. So what I could do is put an else here and say false, but you get the idea, right? So these two things are not identical. They're close. They're close enough, good enough for government work. So if I have just the two, it'll say, yeah, okay, that's close enough. But if I put in the 3 and say identical, it says, nope, they are not identical. Okay? Does that help, Simon? Cool. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay. All right, so we're going to get rid of that. All right, so let's do, what time have we got? Perfect. We got still an hour left. So let's do a little bit of API and see what this looks like in our world. Okay. Okay, so we did continue, we did break. That's all good. We're gonna go, let's make this kind of more like this. Okay. Okay. So let's us get rid of yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll get rid of all that. Okay, so what we have here is, this is basically, this is what we did. This is the new part here. Let me take this out. Okay, so this is what we did on Saturday. Okay, this is a little piece of it. If I pulled it up, you'd recall we were working with arrays, and one of the things that we did is we ran a query where we said find all the contacts where last name is dog, and we want to see their ID, their first name, and their last name, and we're going to run that in a query. And then what we had was we did as I recall, we just did a print R, oops, a print R on contacts like this. Okay, so let's save that and let's see what that looks like. Okay. Okay, so just like we had the other day, we have 3 contacts, Major, Drita, and Nessa, all who have a last name of dog. So here we have our array, right? 0, 1, and 2 are the indexes, first name, ID, last name. So now what we want to do is I want to do a loop through this array. So let's do this. So because it's an array, we're going to do a for each, which is what you do quite often with these. And so we're just going to say for contacts as value, because these are contacts and as value is whatever is as good as anything. So we're going to say for each one of these contacts, we're going to do the following. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to echo. First name, colon, space, concatenate with. Now, watch this. So here, remember when we're in these loops, we're using this val. Now they're basically, while they're in this loop, they're kind of assigned to this variable called value. But we have to tell it which part of value, because remember we've got not just one thing in here, but three, right? So we're going to actually say, yeah, we want within there, we want first name. Okay. So we want to echo first name, value first name, and then a break. Okay. And a semicolon. Then what we want to do is we want to do basically the exact same thing now for ID. So we're going to say ID is equal to ID, and we can do that because we asked for that. Okay. Had we not asked for it in the query in the return fields, then we don't have access to it. We had to ask for it in the query. This query is an array, and now we're looping through that array, and we're saying for each one of these, echo first name, echo ID. But then the other thing I want to do is I want to assign I want to assign the contact ID to a variable, right? So we're gonna do this, okay, like that. And for the moment, let's just leave it at that, okay? So if I say save, let's get rid of this. Make this a little cleaner. Okay, so if I say save, perfect. First name Major, ID 131. First name Drita, 129. First name Nessa, 133. So what you can see now is that it is actually looping through this array created by this query and doing whatever we tell it to do. In this case, printing out value first name, value ID. But it's not always just going to be a case of we want to print, right? We can do tons of stuff within this loop. Now, we're not going to get too overly complicated here, but let's just do something fairly simple. So let's say that for each one of these dogs, we want to do an update, a data contact update. So we're going to say update, and what we want to update is always in an array. And so we're going to say job title, and then it gets a little arrow, and the job title is going to be, we're going to use a string, guard dog, and that's the only thing that we're going to update. Okay, is just that, right? And then, so now we need the API call. So we're going to say con ID equals, con ID equals app, and then that other little arrow. And then update con, which is the API call, open parentheses, and what we are updating is the contact with that contact ID and whatever fields key value pairs are in the array called update. Okay, so now what's going to happen, and let's just do this. Let's just so that we can see it change, what we're going to do is we'll just add another thing here, and we'll say last name and last name here. Okay, so if I look at, I'm sure it's logged me out by now. So if I go over here to Infusionsoft, and I say contacts. Okay, so here are all my contacts. And you can see that for the dogs, there's currently no job title. Okay, But when I save this, now what it's going to do, in addition to looping through and echoing, okay, major dog, dirty dog, nested dog. So now what we're going to see is if we refresh this, they all have a they all have a title. Guard dog, guard dog, guard dog. Okay? So that's a case of, and you do this a lot, by the way. So you you're looking for something. So for example, we're looking for everybody who has a certain tag. We're looking, that's a query. We're looking for everyone who has bought a certain product. We're looking for everyone who has, something in a custom field. And that's going to return more than, one or more people. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 100, it's still an array, right? A query is always going to return an array. So then once you have your array where you've got your list, then you have to turn around and use a loop, a for each loop, to do whatever you want with that data, basically. Okay. Um, okay. So sure. Simon says, could I please explain con ID? And where did that come from? So truthfully, Simon, this could be anything. So it could be, again, because it's just a variable. So it could be dogs, because I haven't used dogs anywhere, right? So I could just say dogs, hit save, and that would be fine too. I can, if I, so there. And if I wanted to, I could do something here. I could say, and I'll show you why, where I'm going somewhere with this. I could say echo dogs, because what update contact gives you back, this is a function, okay? It's a special kind of function. It's an SDK. It's one that's been created by Infusionsoft to be sort of a shorthand for a bunch more code that's normally needed to do this. But the function is update contact. Okay, this is kind of a special function. Okay, that's what the API is basically. So all functions return something. When they execute, they're going to give you something back, some value back, either to let you know it was successful or because you need to do something with that. So some functions return true or false. True meaning they were successful, false meaning they failed. Some return you back, like DS query returns you back an array filled with stuff, in this case contacts. What update contact returns back is a contact ID, the contact ID of the contact that it updated. So if I call this dogs and I echo dogs and I say save now, see this 133, it's, did I put that no, didn't I put that in the loop? Wonder why that's not. Oh, it is. See, it's here because I didn't put a break after it. Duh. So it's echoing back the contact ID, and that is its way of saying not only was this successful, but sometimes you didn't know what the contact ID was going in, and so it's useful for it to echo it back because then you can do things with it. Like now you can go look up all records for that, whatever. So the reason I use con ID is because basically the documentation uses con ID. So if and I went over this the other day. If you find me the API documentation. If you just go and you look at the methods in Infusionsoft, API documentation, you'll see when you go to, for example, what we just did was contact update, con update, which is right here. You will see that that's what they use, con ID. And they use that on purpose. That, as we were talking about the other day, that's their way, their shorthand way in the documentation of telling you what you're going to get back. They set these equal to a variable that's descriptive of what you're going to get back from the function. So update contact gives you a contact ID back, assuming that it worked. Add with dupe check, they didn't assign to a variable, but that actually gives you a contact ID back also. Um, result, result gives you true or false back. So true, it was successful, false, it wasn't. So run action set gives you a result back. Same with removing a tag. If it was successful, you get a true. Here's reschedule campaign steps, and they've labeled that one num cons. That's a new one. I actually never noticed that one, but I am sure that that's the number of contacts that were rescheduled is what it's returning back for you. In fact, it'll probably say that. No, it doesn't, but that is what it's giving you back. And then up here, result. So that one's true, false, result. That one's true, false, result, true, false, condat. Okay, that's load. So again, that one's just giving you all the data for the contact. So you get data. You get the idea. That's where it came from. Doesn't have to be this. It could be anything you want, but I just typically copy and paste out of the documentation and tend to keep it with whatever they use, unless it just really is I need to change it for some reason. Okay. Yes, you can use percent for all contacts. Absolutely, you could. So if I wanted to do that, I would just change the query up here to percent like we did the other day. Oops. Like that. Hit save, and now it's going to give you all of them. And now everybody is a guard dog. Okay. All right. Any other questions about that? Good. Ashley, glad that you could join us. We're almost done, so you're really actually we're pretty much done other than questions, so you're really not going to miss much. So we'll catch you on Thursday. Thursday is strings, you guys, by the way. Thursday, which we do, again, I always say, oh, we'll do a lot with this. Well, I wouldn't have included it in this intro course if we didn't do a lot with it. If it's something we use kind of obscure, I am not doing it. But anyway, so strings will be good. All right. So any other questions that, because I'm done, this is all I've got for you, unless you guys have either questions or something either related to this or anything, API or programming or what have you. I apologize that I did not have your handout done, but was this all right? Could you guys follow along reasonably well, I hope? I will get that hopefully done tonight. Okay. Tell me about okay, hang on one second. I will get to that. And oh yeah, it is long. Okay, hang on. I'll get to that in just a second. Uh, um, Tell me about your level of understanding. How many of you, are you like totally got it, following along? If I sat down, and did it, worked through it, I know I could do this. Still a little fuzzy. Like how are you feeling, and how are you feeling about the API in general or PHP in general? How is your level of confidence with what you can do with it relative to when you first started? I just want to know, like, are we making progress? Or do you actually feel stronger with it than when you started? Is there anything I should do different? Etc. Just let me know that in your comments. While you are doing that, I am going to answer Mona's question. So, okay, so I'm just going to read this. It says, I've set up a repeating reminder sequence based on the birthday reminder campaign from the marketplace. I only need it to repeat 10 times. Meaning, like, if it's a birthday, are you saying 10 years? Or a birthday? I say I'm not familiar with the sequence, so I don't know what it does. Oh, it repeats every week? Oh, okay. So I only need it to repeat 10 times and then send one last email with an upsell. IS support verifies that there's no way to stop it, but manually in the campaign builder. Okay, so it's just a loop, and it's in, so you're saying that this thing is designed to loop forever, Ramona? Just so I understand before I answer the question. So that, yeah. Oh, wow. Every week forever? Okay. So I got this response over in Tyler Garn's API Made Easy group from Patrick Connolly. Ramona, my first thought would be to create a counting variable. Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. As a custom field and have an HTTP post run each time during the sequence, which increments by 1. Then run an if-then scenario where if the variable reaches 10, stop that loop by triggering an API goal in the campaign builder and have it start a sequence that sends the email. Surprisingly, I actually understand most of what he's talking about, loops and if statements. Yay! I just don't know how much would stay in the campaign builder and how much would be custom PHP script. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's actually all you're going to do there. That's awesome because it's not exactly a loop, but so what's going to happen on that, Ramona, is every time you run that campaign, what you at the end of it, let's just say, what you're going to do is you're going to have an HTTP post that that goes to your script. Okay. And what your script is going to do is it's going to say you're going to have a counter field. Let's, for lack of, we'll just call it counter, which is a custom field. Okay. So counter. Okay. So what it's going to do is you're going to use load con to get the value of counter, which is exactly basically what we did the other day. If you look in your arrays, we had a load con in there, an array finished. Okay, so you're going to you're gonna get the value of counter. Okay, and then what you're gonna do is you're going to, whatever that is, you're gonna assign that to a variable, and then you're going to increment it. So let's just say you've assigned it. So now you're going to say counter equals, that's where we use that plus equals, counter plus equals, like that. I don't know why I can never do that. There. So what that does is that just actually, so if it was 9, now it's 10. Okay, it's incrementing that value. Okay. No, you wouldn't even have to do that. You just use counter plus plus. This is easy. Okay, so now counter is plus plus, so it's 1, and then all you would say is if, counter equals 10, so now it's gone out 10 times, or counter is greater than or equal to 10, something like that, and then you need some mechanism for stopping the campaign, which can be anything. You could apply a tag. You could, and then have the tag, take them out of the sequence. You could trigger an API goal. Those are probably the two most common ones. So, and that's how you would do it. So this is the only part that would live outside of the campaign. So just to, yeah, you can apply a tag in the script, you bet. But then you'd have a goal out there that was a tag goal that was at the end of your sequence, so that it finished the sequence. It didn't keep looping if that tag goal was, whenever that tag goal was fulfilled. Okay. Um, so, um, and I can show you an example of that. Actually, this webinar and this course sequence is a loop. And if you opt out of this webinar, you decide you don't want to keep coming, there's a link in the emails that you get that says you can opt out of the webinar. And as soon as you do that, it kills this loop. You won't keep getting signed up, and you won't keep getting the emails and the reminders and stuff. It's exactly like that. It's exactly the same. I don't have a counter, but the tag goal is the same idea. So you can apply the tag in the script, and in the campaign the goal is set. Yes. Right. That's exactly right. And to apply a tag, there's a method for that actually. It's add group assign, it's in the contact. Nope, it's in the data service here. So it looks like this. Maybe not. I thought it was in data. Maybe it was in contact. Oh, add to group. This is it. So in the API world, group means tag. Okay. So here's how and you can only do one, by the way. So here's your code for adding a tag. So you may already know how to do this, but let's just do like this. In case anyone wants to see this, we'll just go ahead and do it. Whew, it's getting dark in my office. I can't even see my when I started, it was light, and now it's dark, and I can't even see my keyboard anymore. I probably should turn on the lights, but all right. So we do something like this. Let's say we want to apply a tag in here. So what we do is we don't need contact ID equals to 123 because we already know contact ID, right? For each one of these. But the group ID, that's our tag ID. So let's find a tag that we can apply to each one of these guys like this. So just go to tags. Oh, I don't have favorites set in this sandbox. So if we go to tags, do I even have any tags? Yeah. Okay, so let's we'll say tutorials, tag 132. What the heck? Okay. I hope that's not tied to a campaign. Let's use something further down. That's better. Like let's use 112. So what we're going to do is we are going to say tag ID or group ID is 112, and we're going to say group assign. So here's our result, group assign, contact ID, group ID. We have all that. And the other thing I want to do is I don't want this to be all, I want to put this back to dog. Okay. And so if I say save now, and this runs, okay, so now it just ran for those three. And so now if we go, oh heck, if we go and we pull up contacts and we look at the dogs, so now we should see that Dritta dog has that tag, survey value no. Now, if in a campaign we had obviously set that goal, at the end to say that's it, takes them out of the campaign, done. So let me, oh wow. I got a bunch of comments and stuff while I was talking. Okay, let me see here. And get rid of some of these so I can figure out where we are. Oh good. Good. Uh, um, good. Okay. Good. All right. Uh, I'm reading people's comments about where they are with the PHP while I'm getting to the bottom of this list. You're making this your homework. Yay! Very good. Okay. All right, Peter, that's a question. That's a Okay, very good. Feel free to put them in the Facebook group. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Okay, so let's see. Peter, I'm just wondering if you could run us through one of your campaigns inside Campaign Builder and explain what might be happening from a programming point of view. I am more than we have 30 minutes. So if you guys want to stick around and have me do that, I am more than happy to do that. Um, just got to think which one would make some sense other than this one. I mean, I guess I could do this one again. Um, Simon says, does PHP have user prompts? Oh, I'm sure it does. I've never tried one, but I bet if we go over here to, um, and just, holy cow, I cannot see my keyboard. Okay, if we're gonna stick around, I gotta get up and turn on some lights. What am I trying to type? User prompts. So you can tell I can't type by touch. Um, huh. Must be in, I assume it's in here somewhere. Anyway, I don't know the answer to that, but what I'm sure it must. Simon, I bet if you just did a PHP search on user prompts, you'd find out. I'm sure it must. Every other language does. Okay, so you guys want me to take you through a campaign? Is that, or I guess I can just say someone does. At least two people do now. So if you want to stick around, great. And if you want to take off, that's okay too. Because we're definitely done with what we had scheduled, and we'll do strings on Thursday. So you guys, I'm going to set you down and go turn on my lights. Hang on one second. Okay. You guys hear the DAWGSs in the background barking? Uh, okay, let's see, what is all this? Yeah. Okay. Ramona, I will show you both. Ramona's asking about the difference between an HTTP post snippet in the campaign builder and an API call in the campaign builder. That is confusing to people until they start. Once you start using it, you're like, one's a goal and one's an action is the primary difference. You can use an API call as a goal. So let me see here. What are we gonna do here? Let's just go find this campaign. We'll switch to my app. Okay, so this is the one that runs the courses and webinars, and I did actually go through this a week or two ago at a really high level when I was talking about loops in the extending Infusionsoft. Now, actually, so if you look at this, I have two, right? All you guys know. We have that extending Infusionsoft webinar that is on hold right now while I'm doing this. And that's this top part. And then I basically replicated it for the PHP class. And I just was too lazy. I actually, I can, I just haven't bothered yet. I can put these two together into one sequence for it to run both. I just haven't gotten around to it. So at the moment, this is the course and this is the webinar, and that's kind of how I distinguish between the two. So the webinar is every Thursday, every other Thursday, except now while we're doing this, and the this is every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, right? But this is finite and this runs forever. So they are slightly different, but they could still, through the way the scripts are written, work in the same campaign or the same piece of the campaign. I just haven't done it. Okay. So if we take kind of let's just forget about that part for a minute and let's just look at this PHP class and look at this campaign. Now, this piece here is because I got messed up today. This was me fixing what was messed up today. So normally this piece wouldn't be here. So we'll go here like this. So let's just get rid of this piece. Oops. Yeah. And we'll get rid of that too. Okay. Okay, so this is what it would normally look like. So you had, if you think about this, you actually had two ways that you could have gotten into this course. Early days, before I had anything put together, I just said, hey, if you click on this link in this email, I know who you are, and that will get you signed up. And that's how most of you guys signed up. So, and that link in that email just applied a tag when you clicked on it, and that tag was that you wanted to sign up for the PHP class, and that dropped you into the campaign. But then later on, I went back and actually created a form, and which some of those of you signed up later are using. So either way, this is how you get into this campaign. Okay, this here is how you are looping. So I'll get to the API trigger in a second. So what happens is here, when you come into the campaign for the very first time, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm calling this HTTP post. And a couple things I'm doing here. So the key distinction is this is an action. An HTTP post is an action that occurs as part of a campaign sequence. So it runs this script, which we can go look at. And I pass it a couple things. I pass it your contact ID and your email, which is pretty standard stuff. But I also am passing it this event type, which I have hard coded as course. And that is so that I can distinguish between if you came in up here and you look at this post, it is posting to the exact same script, identical. The only difference is that here I'm passing an event type equals to webinar. So when it goes and it reads those post variables, when it looks at event type, it's going to have a if, which you'll see. If event type is webinar, do this. If event type is course, do that. That's an example of how we can hard code. We did this, by the way, when we were while back when we were doing requests, posts, and gets. And I kind of showed you this, but anyway, that's like a practical application of that. So here's your post, your first post. And that post, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into on the script. Like, do you want me to just go through this and show you these goals, or do you want me to actually kind of go through the script a little bit, or what do you guys want? What do you want to see? Okay. Okay. Well, so I can't really go through the whole thing, but so okay, everyone wants to see some script. So this script is this one. Oops. Okay. Um, here's what I've done here. So this is the three variables that are getting passed in. Okay. So these are getting passed in again, regardless of whether you're coming in course or webinar. And so these are the post variables. I'm using request, which by the way, um, I I used to use getter post, and a very high level Infusionsoft programmer who shall remain nameless said, "Why are you doing that? Just use request." And then another very high level programmer saw me tell you guys to use request the other day and PM'd me privately and said, "You shouldn't tell them to use request because, we don't really know if that's a cookie or a get or a post." And it's true. If you're not using Infusionsoft, you could get some stuff that you're not expecting. But again, this is to me like that 80-20 thing. I think when we do tying it all together, I'm going to add an if statement in here for you to go back to so you can tell whether it's a get or a post and do it right. But anyway, but it's interesting because there is some disagreement because someone just like him is the one that told me to use request in the first place, which I think is pretty funny. So anyway, but that's how we get those three variables. And then here's an if right here. It's actually an if else. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, if the type is course, here are our course dates. Actually, this is good because I can show you a loop too. And right now, because again, I've been lazy, I keep meaning to go back and just like do my own API calls to go to webinar, but I just haven't had time. So I'm using plus this to do each one of these. So here are all the dates for this course. I just have them hard coded in here. And so what I do is I take those dates and I create an array. Now, this is interesting too, because remember that I said that arrays always start with 0. The first pointer, the first index is always 0. However, you can make it 1 if you want. You can make a 1-based array, but you have to tell it specifically you want a 1-based array, and so that's what this means. So it's just a list, course 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but I've said don't start this one with 0, start it with 1. That's this. We didn't talk about that in class. It's very rare that you really want to do that, but in this case it just was handier. So and I'll show you why in a second that I did that. So I have this array of the dates, and then I also have this else, right? And my else is if this is not a course, then it must be a webinar because those are the only two things I have. So I have the same thing for webinar, and I have those as dates too. So this is the end of that course webinar if else thing. So now we're out of that and we're here. So what I've said is I use the same variables plus this post URL 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, regardless of whether it's a course or a webinar. So here we create another array. So at this point we have two arrays. One is with the dates for either the course or the webinar, and an array with the corresponding plus this URLs. And I set my counter to 1 because guess what? I'm about to do a loop. But what I did is instead of doing like a for loop or a loop that increments, I actually just went ahead and used a for each because it is an array. And then, but I just set my counter and I'm just going to increment it inside because I'm not using the count as a condition for the loop. I'm I want to run this for every single date. But I do need that counter, and I'll show you why. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, here's our loop for each date. And remember, I set that date here as an array of all the courses for each date as value. Now, this is a special little thing that, and what this means is if you want to actually act on, you can look this up, but because I'm probably not going to explain it, I know what it is, and probably not going to explain it very well. But if you actually want to act on this value, normally it's like it just happens in the loop, but you don't actually do anything to it. You don't add to it or subtract to it or do anything to it. If you want to actually act on this value inside of the loop, you have to put this little thing, not ampersand, yeah, whatever that is. So that's what that is right there. So I say for each date is value, so then what I'm saying is, because I have to tell you in the emails what is I need to know the date of the previous course, because the previous one is the date that's in the links to the archive and the handout, which is dynamic in here. So I have to keep track of what's in a custom field, what was the previous date, and if so, I say if count is greater than 1, then this is our array of dates. Then the previous date was date count minus 1. So like, in other words, if it loops 5 times before it finds the current webinar, then the previous one was 4 in the array, had an index of 4 in the array. But if this was the first one, then set previous date to the first one, because there wasn't a previous, and you don't want that to be blank. So I'm just setting the date to itself for previous if there was no previous, because it's the first one. Anyway, so there's a little if inside of a loop, and then we have another if. So now we're saying, okay, if new date time, that's basically now. When this runs, new date time is the current date and time. So we're saying if that is less than value. Well, where did we set value? We set value. Oh, value is the for each, this value, right? So this is date. This is what we're running through. Date as value. The array are all of the dates, but inside the loop we call it value, right? We just did that. So we're saying if within this loop, because it's looping through dates, if the current date is less than value, then do all of these things. But if it's not, then keep going through your loop. So here's where, let me show you where this whole if breaks. It's right here. This is like the end of that if. Okay, so like it's going to do all these things if the date that it's looking at is less than the current date. So let me just kind of go back here. So it's going to say, okay, this is 6:15 on July 14th. Is that greater than, or sorry, is that less than? What do I do? If new date time is less than value. Yeah, right? Well, so 114 is not less than 104. So it just loops around again. Is January 14th less than 107? Nope. Okay, loop again. Is January 14th less than January 9th? No. January 11th? No. January 14th? Maybe. Oh, right now, if you signed up right now, the answer would be no. It's not less than that because it's later than 16:30, the start time. But if it was before 1630, the answer would be yes. Okay, but right now it's no, so it's going to loop one more time and it's going to find, January 16th, course 6 is going to give us a true. So when it gets to course 6, then what's inside the loop is going to actually execute, which is all this stuff. Okay, so then what we do is we take that date time value of June 16th, whatever, and we format it in a bunch of different ways because I need those to be able to do different things with. So we format it this way because I'm going to create tags on the fly dynamically, and I need it in that format. We're going to use it this way because I've got to put it in a date time field in Infusionsoft. This is the humanized date version of that. This is the human time version of that. This is the previous date that I'm going to put in a date time field, and this is the tag similar to the tag one because we're going to use this for the archives and bit.ly, and then this is the plus this URL that's going to run. Okay, so it based on just on that value, it's going to figure out all these things just on previous date and value. And then it's going to say, right, if the type's a course, then we're going to create the URL for the archive in the handout by dynamically inserting archive date and tag date. See, there's actually a method to my madness here. Otherwise, it's a webinar, and so those URLs look like that. Then we use something called curl. Now, curl's a little bit kind of beyond the scope of this, but basically what curl does is curl allows you to, it's like it allows you to trigger a post from within a script, or it's as if it's like you can fill out a form or trigger a post as if you are doing it manually. So actually I'm triggering a post to plus this using curl, just the same as if I had put the plus this URL in an HTTP snippet, but I'm not. I'm doing it from here. And because I'm doing it from inside the script, I have to use curl to do that. But this is where we run that plus this post, which then signs you up for the course, and the next course or whatever. And then we have to find the ID. So for every one of these events, I always have an event registered, event attended, and event did not attend. So the first thing I have to do is I have to put an event registered tag on you. So here's a query where we say, I know that category, all event registered tags are category 31. So see this tag date that I formatted as that 2014-01-14. So I'm saying find me all tags that have a name starting with, in this category, event registered, that start with 2014-01, well, 16 in this case. And I'm returning that as a query. And then this is why, remember I said it returns something, right? In this case, it's returning an array of all the tags that match that. So I'm saying, does that tag exist? If it's not set, so in other words, there is no, I use this, okay? I know I'm going through this kind of fast, but look at this. I'm saying this is an array, right? So I'm saying if the first item in this array, ID, the ID of the first item in this array is not set, meaning it doesn't exist. There is no first item. There is no ID in the first place of that array. Then I have to go create that tag. So I do that. The tag text is either 8020 or extending IS. The group name, which is the tag, is tag date plus tag text in the ID, and then I use this call contact group, which contact group actually creates a tag. Okay. Else, if it does exist, then I'm going to return that tag's ID. It was set, so I can return it. And I'm actually going to assign it, what we just did. I'm going to put it on you. so that I know that you've, either way, I'm going to put it on you. That way, now you're tagged as having registered, and then I'm going to break. So here's an example of break. Okay, because the thing is, I don't want to keep looping past the next date. I've just signed you up for the next one, and then I want to break out of this loop. So as soon as it finds the first one greater than today's date, okay, it does all these things with it, and then it breaks. But if not, then it just keeps going until it finds it. Okay. So now I'm out. Okay. Okay, now I've tagged you, I've signed you up for the webinar. And then the only other thing I have to do is just write some stuff to your record. I have to fill in all those dates that I formatted before. So if it's a course, I created an array that we're going to use to update. So I put these dates in your record because I work with those or merge them or do something with them. And I just run a DS update. And so at that point, you're registered and you're tagged and you're signed up for whichever was the next course at the time that you signed up, regardless of when you signed up. So that was all of that. So that was this post right here. Okay. Now before I go on, let me just see what we got. Is new a global array? New. Where did you see new? Peter. Where are you talking about new? Or are you just referring to something in general? I don't see new. It's not ringing a bell for me. Oh, okay, gotcha. This is not a global. This has to do with objects. So yeah. Date time is an object. See, PHP. I don't know. This is like a little deep, but there's something called object-oriented programming, so like .NET and a bunch of different languages. It's kind of like, a few years back, it just kind of became all the rage. It made programming a lot easier, quite frankly. And PHP, I never was not object-oriented. And I guess it was here, I don't know which release, but here fairly recently, they added objects. So now there's like these two different parallel universes. You can do things what do they call the non-object way? Procedural. So there's procedural programming and object-oriented programming. And so I can use the old procedural method, which actually I do at times. Date is the old procedural method. I actually, got my hand slapped a little bit, which was made me mad and was silly. But anyway, for using MySQL and MySQLi, because that's the old procedural way. And yes, the cool kids are using PDO, which is the object-oriented way, but we've been using those old ways for a really, really, really long time. And quite frankly, they make a lot more sense, I think, and are a lot easier to teach than the object-oriented way. So that's why I keep using them. But anyway, this happens where it's convenient, and I figured it out. I mix and match all the time, and this actually is date time is an object oriented. And so what you do to create a new object is you just say new. So I don't know that global array is the right word. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's just how you instantiate a new object. So that's where that comes from. But it's definitely a reserved word. I just don't know what kind of reserved word. New. It's how you instantiate a new object. So that's what I did there. New date time gives you the current time in object-oriented land. Okay, so back to the campaign. Hope that answered your question. All right, so we won't bother with all that stuff because you know what that is. Okay, so So then what I do, and I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time on this exactly. Oh, but this is where I actually add you to a database, a MySQL database. So this is a different script, webinar next add reminder.php. And so if you look at that one quickly, and I'm not really going to go through that one, but I will show it to you. I should put these back in. This one. Okay. So again, it's just when, and kind of the thing that I do want to show you is, again, it's just this idea of, okay, so here's the post, right? Here's the name of the script, here's the file name, and here's the name value pairs. And so this time I'm putting in contact ID, contact email, but I'm also putting in a value that I just wrote in there from a custom field called this API course date time. And I'm giving that a name of next date and event type course, so that when I pass those to the script, I'm reading those, right, in request, and then I'm grabbing them, and so there's my PDO. I went and did it, but like, tell me, like, that looks like, compared to procedural, that looks real to me. That looks really intimidating. Like, anyway, whatever. I just pissy because I guess I'm not a cool kid. But anyway, so I put you in a database, and without going through all that, I'll show you what that looks like. And the purpose of this database is so that I can send you an email an hour before the course, because, as I've said before, Infusionsoft can't send an email an hour before the course unless you hard code it. So as it loops through all of you, right, it sticks you guys in here, and with either your email address, whether your webinar or course, the date of your webinar and course, and then it sets sent to 0. But not only is it setting the date, but it's actually, this is Chicago time, which is where the server is. So 14:29 is really an hour before Chicago time, is an hour before the course starts. So I have a list of all the people that need an email and when they need an email. And then this, so that adds you to the script. What's the correct syntax if you want to apply a tag in the HTTP post snippet? You can't actually apply a tag in an HTTP post snippet, Peter. You have to do that in the script itself. Now you can of course use an apply tag. I mean, like, a lot of times it's like, well, what's the point? Unless you're going to do something programmatically where, like, you're dynamically figuring out what tag to set and or creating it if it doesn't exist, like I just did, then then for sure that makes, you're going to want to do that within the script. But otherwise, there's really no point. If I wanted to apply a tag there, I'd just drag out my apply remove tag. But if I want to apply it in this, so my choices are either the apply tag snippet, or here within the script, I can also apply a tag, which is this. It's what we did before, and it's what we did. It's this group assign is how you do it with the API, either way. Does that make sense? But the snippet itself, the post itself, cannot create a tag. That's a different deal. If you want to export the tags to a MySQL database, then that's just like what I've done here. Basically, it's a query where you query the contact group record, which is this. That's exactly what, well, yeah. And then you loop through and write those to the database. So it's not actually dissimilar from what I've done here. If you want to talk to me about that more, I don't want to stop too much, get too in the weeds on this database thing. I will tell you that the database thing, you've got to make, that's the one place where security is an issue. And they brought that to my attention, and they were absolutely right. I was not really paying that much attention to that. If that is the one place where you open, when you start writing things to a database, is the one place where you open yourself up to being hacked. So make sure that if you're doing it yourself, that you know what you're doing and you're doing it correctly. And if not, make sure you have a developer who does know what they're doing. This is correct, by the way, this because I've done all this PDO bind stuff. But that is your big security. It's pretty hard to you're not exposing yourself anywhere really else in Infusionsoft except for here when you're opening up to a database. Particularly when you're taking user input and putting it in a database. Okay, so that's that. And then, so we add you to the cron, and then, let's see, what do I do? And so then you actually just sit here on a timer waiting for the course to pass. And at 8 o'clock after the day after the course, because plus this goes and marks you as attended or not attended. And then I just rerun that exact same script, because when I rerun it this time, what it's going to do is it's going to roll you over to the next one. That's the same script that we went over the first time. So that's how you get the loop. So once it's rolled you over, and now today's date becomes the previous date, in attended course, here's a place where I do use a script to apply a tag. But the reason I do that is because it's dynamic again. So if I look at that webinar next attendance tag, you'll see it's because what I'm doing, and I could, so here's the post variables here. It tells me that you attended, and so, and I have that date, that 2014-01-14 format. So I actually go find the tag, event attended. If it's not there, I create it. And if it is, either way, I either create it or just assign it. But this is where it applies the tag. But again, that's programmatic, so that I don't have to add if I do 100 of these, I don't have to add all the tags for them. These tags get created automatically as part of this process. So that's the reason I apply a tag programmatically. There, I remove a tag. Same thing there. And then, so here's your loop, Ramona. So at this point, what I do is I take you, because I'm just, never really certain about this idea of looping back into the same campaign. So I actually want you to go all the way out of my sequence and then put you back in it, just to make sure that you go back in. So what I do is I apply a tag here that says finished course campaign, and that satisfies this goal right here, which is finished module. That tag says you're done. You're at the end of this. There is no more. And if anywhere along the way, had you said you wanted to out, then, obviously this goal would have been satisfied and all this stuff would have gone away. It would have just said, you're done, and you're always done. Okay. But here's the loop. So because I finished this by applying this finish module tag, which takes you out of finishes the sequence, then what I do is I come back here, and you can see I have this tag goal here, which is hooked to this sequence, but it is not hooked to all of this. There is no arrow there. So what this does is, and by the way, this may very well be overkill. I am pretty sure if I really sat down and was willing to test it, not pretty sure, I know I could do it without this, but for me, this is easier for me. So what I do is that same goal tag that gets applied here to take you out of the sequence is also the goal to start you in the sequence here, in this little tiny sequence. And so what I do when you when that gets triggered is I call a little script called webinar next goal. And this one is so really basic. All it does is triggers this API call right here. So this goal, I'll show you the script in a second. So these API, these are goals, okay? And so in the same way, this is really close to a goal that gets triggered by assigning a tag. The difference is we're, instead of assigning a tag, we actually give this API call a name. In this case, trigger course. It's kind of like having a tag named trigger course, but it's not a tag. It's a call that you make like this. Where are you? Webinar next goal. Okay, I'll show you. This is it. So it just says, okay, here we go. Read the contact ID and the event type. And for that contact ID, if the event type is a course, then the call name is trigger course. If it's a webinar, the call name is trigger webinar. And you can see that here. So if I look at this, the call name is trigger course. If I go up here, this is the webinar. Its call name is trigger webinar. And so there is a call in Infusionsoft called achieve goal. That one, which if you give it the integration name, which is just your app name, the call name, which is either trigger course or trigger webinar, and the contact ID, it satisfies this goal just like a tag would, but with a call using a script. I easily could have done this by making this another different tag and then doing it that way. But like, why use up tags? To me, it's because it just like, I mean, I'm already doing all these scripts. I might as well use this API call because that just saves me from creating yet another tag. I got enough tags already. So if it's not serving a purpose in terms of, if it's just a process tag, to kick this off and it's not telling me anything about the person, then I'd rather use the API goal than the tag goal. That's kind of how, in my mind, I distinguish between the two. And so then that starts it all back up again. It adds you to the reminder, then it sits and waits till the next course, and that just keeps rolling you through this until we run out of courses. So is that kind of what you were looking for? Oh wow, we went over. You guys, why didn't you tell me we went over? Did that help? Or did it just like make it more cloudy? Oh, awesome. Sweet. So we must be making progress then. Because I think the first time I showed people this in the extending webinar, everyone was like, oh my God. Like their eyes rolled back in their head and their hair caught on fire. It was like, what? Good. Your head is spinning now. Simon, I could show it a couple more times because there's a lot there's a lot going on in this script. But you guys, so like here's the thing. Number one, you can see this is version 3. So it didn't start out this tight, and there should be a version 4. Really, there's these two things could be one. There's no reason to have these duplicated. Because I'm just lazy and I haven't done it. But each version I did, you should have seen version 1. Man, I was like, first of all, it wasn't nearly as dynamic or programmatic, so I had like goals for every single date, and like this thing looked like Spiderweb City. And every single time that I did it, I got it more compact and more compact and more compact. I didn't, first of all, so I did not sit down and do this like all in one go. So that's key number 1. Key number 2 is I did all of this myself. And, again, like I haven't been at this for very long. So I may be slightly more persistent than the average bear and like figuring this stuff out. But if I can figure this stuff out, you guys can figure this stuff out too. And even though there's nothing, like, if you look at, I think that's the third takeaway from this, and this is the thing that I like was the aha for me, that I kind of got me into wanting to share it with everybody else, was if you look in all of this and you just look at this little bitty piece by piece by piece by piece, and that's what I mean by code in chunks, right? Almost the way I explained it. Each one of these little things is absolutely not complicated on its own. And all we're doing is taking like these basic little building block calls and loops and ifs and things. Like those ifs and loops and arrays, those are kind of like the glue that hold the calls together. And when you are just able to take those really basic building blocks and think about like how you just stack them on top of each other, then you have a program that, while it is very simple, actually does some pretty complex stuff. You know what I'm saying? But no one part of it is hard. It's real. It's like, like pretty basic stuff. Like everything that I just showed you that runs this whole thing, you've seen in this basic 80/20 program. And so that really, like, when I realized that, and then like all of a sudden that's when the key turned in the lock for me. I'm like, oh, like I can do so much with this, because all I got to do is know these little blocks and then put them together, and I can do all these cool things. So hopefully you kind of now can kind of start, since you've got all the blocks, or almost have all the blocks, you can start to see how that does all fit together. Um, cool. All right. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Good, good, good. I don't want your head to spin though. I would not mind, Peter. Um, as long as you're careful with it. Um, good. So Ramona says it's a relief to see the connection between the builder and the scripts. That was like the black hole no one else wants to explain. Yeah, that is funny, isn't it, Ramona? Yeah, like I get that. I don't know, and I don't think it's on purpose really, but it's like almost because it's like so obvious, I think, to somebody who's a programmer, that they just don't think like it that it needs. Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, they don't think it needs explaining, like, because like, well, it's a post, like, well, hello. I wasn't born knowing what a post is, or yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And once I figured out this, like, I kept looking at that API trigger thing, and I'm like, oh man, I should probably figure out what that thing does. It took me a pretty long time before I did, and then I like looked at it and I thought, well, that was so silly of me, because that's the easiest thing. It's basically like applying a tag. Why didn't I just stop and look at that? But you look at it and you think, ooh, API goal, that's gonna be hard. This stuff, and this stuff is like not most of it is not that hard. Really, it's not. Okay. All right, I'm just going through comments. Good, good. Yay, yay. Awesome. All right. We're done. And we had like 9 whole people stuck with us to the end. You guys are like the diehards, the ones that have been here on every call pretty much. All right. Well, very good. I'm going to call it a night. You guys have a good evening. Thursday, same time, same station, and we'll do strings.